This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop.
Got it.
Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Been a long education.
Yeah, stop cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, and welcome to it, my friends. It is Friday, and that makes it Free for All Friday. That means you can get in on the conversation. That means you can be heard, and so much to talk about. Would you like to talk about the governor's 75-point plan on correcting what's going on in Flint? Would you like to address the hundreds of millions of dollars being spent in that community to deal with the aftermath, the effects of lead in the water? Do you want to talk about what's happened in Brussels, Belgium? It's your opportunity. It's your opportunity to step up and be heard. 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. It is the Steve Gruber Show. Well, the Belgian government is admitting that more could have been done to prevent Tuesday's suicide bombings and terrorist attack in Brussels. This comes as two high-ranking ministers offered to resign their positions over law enforcement's failure to act on a warning from Turkey last year that it had arrested one of the would-be bombers. The United States also had some of these terrorists on watch lists. Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel asked Interior Minister Jean Jambon and Justice Minister Koen Geens to stay on. Given the current challenge the government is facing, however, Geens admitted to reporters and authorities they don't have to be proud of what happened. We perhaps did things we should not have done. The attacks on the airport there and a subway train killed at least 31 people now, the latest death toll. Well over 250 injured, so 300 maimed and murdered in the latest Islamic terrorist attack. Revelations that the attacks were carried out in the name of ISIS and by the same ISIS cell behind last November's attacks in Paris that killed 130 people have led to very uncomfortable questions for Belgian counterterror intelligence and policing. I would point out that the United States offered to help Belgium in the wake of the Paris attacks at the Bataclan and elsewhere, and the United States was flatly turned down. Many of these questions surround Turkey's disclosure this week that it had apprehended one of the airport suicide bombers, Ibrahim el-Bakrawi. He was stopped and apprehended near Turkey's border with Syria in June of 2015. Turkey said it had warned Belgium that it had flagged el-Bakrawi as a foreign terrorist fighter and had a criminal record in Belgium at the time he went to Turkey, but Belgium authorities could find no links to terrorism. Well, they can now. One of those links leads right back to Michigan. A West Michigan man and former Oakland University basketball player was among those injured when those bombs went off at the airport. In fact, he took time to speak with Good Morning America in an emotional hospital bed interview. Sebastian Bellin wiped away tears, choked back sobs. He obviously very emotional, difficult situation that ties it right back to where you and I live. It's clip one. Go.
I just saw. I remember seeing an explosion, the first explosion near the pharmacy at the airport, and I turned my head and I saw these people running, and when I got there, I was, I think I blacked out for a little bit, and I remember seeing two little kids to my right, and the little hands were up in the air, and then the whole time I was just trying to tell myself I'm gonna make it. And when I got in that ambulance, then I knew I I was good. I guess that's the point. When I was in the ambulance, then I knew I was all right. But until then, I got no idea. So that's it. You know, I'm here to fight another day, and I just didn't want my girls to grow up without a dad. You know.
You can feel the emotion. This is what Leading from Behind has brought to our shores. It is time to roll up our sleeves. It is time to call Islamic terrorism for what it is, because this day that occurred in Brussels and the day that occurred in Paris, that day is not far away for you and I in this country. Unless we get more focused, laser focused, more serious about what we're doing. There's just no other way around it. 400 to 600 ISIS fighters, at least, have spread across Europe. I would guess the number is probably far higher. We know that with the problems at our southern border and the illegals crossing almost at will, that we have similar terrorist cells in this country. And the bombs made there in Brussels were made out of common household products. So if the bomb-making material is here and the people are here, then on this Good Friday, you know that terrorists are among us. You could draw no other logical conclusion. There are terrorists among us that would like to do us great harm, maim and murder as many as possible in the name of Islam. Whether you consider it their Islam or somebody else's, it doesn't matter. They're doing it in the name of Islam. That's what they'll tell you. And they will also tell you further that anybody who doesn't practice their type of Islam is also a target and not to be spared. In fact, those people might be in more danger. But listening to Sebastian Bellin, excuse me, brings it home for me. A West Michigan man just traveling, working, getting on an airplane to come home to his family. Watching the explosions, at least 20 people died in that airport. If he had been a bit closer, or a piece of shrapnel or debris had come his way, it may have ended far differently. When we come back here today, I want to share something with you that is highly unusual. There's an interview that happened on Tuesday or Wednesday, I guess Tuesday, with Hillary Clinton, and she's on the CBS Morning News. And she starts talking about this, and suddenly she gets cut off. It's really odd if you haven't seen this. We have to figure out why she was cut off. I mean, they just dumped her. Bam. Back in a moment to evaluate that and much more on the Steve Gruber Show.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
Welcome back to it on this Free-for-All Friday. It's the Steve Gruber Show. The phone number, if you want to join the conversation, 888-900-9966. Now, this next bit here, I'm still trying to figure out what went on here. Hillary Clinton comes on to the CBS Morning News after the terrorist attacks in Brussels. All right, she's having a conversation with them. And I'm not going to tell you anything more than that. I want you to listen to it if you haven't heard it. Listen to how it ends, and then we're going to talk about it. Clip 6, go.
Secretary Clinton, you've often said it's not enough to contain ISIS, you have to defeat ISIS. What is your definition of defeat here, and do you think Europe has a handle on what's happening there?
That's a really important question, and I don't know that Europe has yet fully come to grips with the threat that ISIS poses. And remember, there are other groups that are ISIS-like that are, intent upon radical jihadist terrorist attacks. So we've got to defeat ISIS, and that means being in very close cooperation.
Secretary Clinton, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to leave you now. Thank you for joining us.
Is that the strangest thing you've heard today? She uses the term radical jihadi terrorists. Was that why she was cut off? She used a term that Donald Trump has been using. Was she cut off because she was a little bit rambling? That was more than abrupt. That was being cut off at the knees. Is that the strangest thing? I mean, just bizarre. I don't understand. In fact, I want to just go ahead, cue that back up, because to fully appreciate you need to hear it twice and go, what was that all about? Go ahead. Roll it again.
Secretary Clinton, you've often said it's not enough to contain ISIS. You have to defeat ISIS. What is your definition of defeat here? And do you think Europe has a handle on what's happening there?
That's a really important question. And I don't know that Europe has yet fully come to grips with the threat that ISIS poses. And remember, there are other groups that are ISIS-like that are, intent upon radical jihadist terrorist attacks. So we've got to defeat ISIS, and that means being in very close cooperation.
Secretary Clinton, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to leave you now. Thank you for joining us.
We're going to have to leave you now. Isn't that bizarre? Yeah, I'd like to know what's going on there. We're going to continue to look at that clip and try to sort that one out. Meanwhile, let's go to the hotline. Steve, first up today on Free for All Friday. Steve, welcome to it. Steve, what's on your mind today?
That was kind of interesting as far as it didn't fit. It seemed not to fit the narrative.
It seems not to fit anything.
Right. Well, it didn't fit their narrative as wanting to get to the bottom of terrorists, but not putting a name on them. But the bigger thing we have here clearly is a choice of the direction we're going to vote. We have Double D standing on the side with a nice smile. She's saying nothing. We have Hillary Clinton telling us what we think we need to hear. And then we have Donald Trump. I think he's probably... The guy is like a street fighter telling you the truth. That's the best way I can describe the guy. He's just a street fighter. And if you don't like the answer, stop asking the questions. Because he's opened up so many avenues that the pencil necks in Washington would never even mumble a word about.
Yeah, they say he's unelectable, Stevie, and I don't know how that's going to play out, because I believe he's probably going to sneak across the line with enough delegates to get the nomination. We'll see, but I think he's going to be very close. I think he sneaks across the line. It might be on the very end of California, but here's the thing. They keep telling you he's unelectable, yet he's the one that's been driving the conversation, driving the agenda of the political conversation for almost a year.
I believe if there's any real skullduggery going on, I think we're staring at a Trump Cruz ticket.
Well, we'll see what happens there. We'll have to check that out. Steve, thanks for checking in as always. Let's check down the line. Dan has been hanging on in Grand Rapids on the Free for All Friday hotline. Dan, welcome to it.
Yeah, good morning, Steve. We're never going to beat this ISIS if we just keep playing defense. We always seem to just wait for them to attack us, and then we send in the police and look for evidence and all of this. ISIS is the Islamic State. They have a capital city. It's in Syria. They're financed by oil money. Yet we don't go over and bomb their capital city. Well, we don't want to do anything. We don't want to stop the oil from coming into them, and they can sell it to Turkey. We won't bomb the oil refineries. We won't bomb the trucks that are carrying the oil because, gee, there might be an innocent person driving that truck.
But the Russians
we wouldn't want it.
Yeah, the Russians went in and bombed those oil convoys, and we hit a couple of them, but we didn't hit many of them. You're right about that. We did hit a couple, but not much. And you're right, Raqqa sits there, untouched, the capital of the Islamic State. But their territory is getting smaller. I don't know if it's because of our work or because of the work of the Russians and others, but it has gotten smaller. I suppose that we have certainly contributed to that. But you're right. You need to treat and conduct a war as it's a war, as if it is a war, Dan.
Yeah, these people aren't hiding in caves like Al-Qaeda was. So we can go get them. And I'm tired of looking at a whole bunch of people dropping off flowers or stuffed animals or flags or something like this. What I want to see is some Belgian, French, American, English bombers, fully loaded, heading over there and take this capital city right off the map.
It's the Steve Gruber Show on Free for All Friday.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
Get up off of that thing and chance to do you better. Get up off of that thing.
All right, welcome back to it.
Sing it now. Get up off of
A lot of places in the state today concerned about flooding, including southeastern Michigan, 2 inches of rain. In and around the Detroit area, heavy flooding in that region. So those listening to WFNT Flint and elsewhere, keep an eye on that today. Of course, just a mess yesterday. Rain, ice, snow, and everything in between. Seemed to get dumped on us. Yeah, quite a mess. And then back into warmer weather now. The 5-day forecast putting temperatures in southern Michigan into the mid-50s. So a whole lot of that snow that came into northern Michigan, from Traverse City north to the bridge and into the southern tier of the Upper Peninsula will be gone soon. So a big mess for you. It is Free for All Friday. You can give me a call, 888-900-9966. Of course, the good news is that with that going away, maybe that's the last one. Maybe that's the last slap of winter for us. Pretty good one, I might add. Lots of accidents around the state. You probably might have seen a couple yourself. But that could be the last slap of winter for us as we move forward. And let's be honest, the water levels in Michigan this year should be fabulous. Should be a terrific summer that we're setting up for. All right. Well, as you know, President Obama has been in Cuba and Argentina over the last few days. And in Argentina here yesterday, while his trip to Buenos Aires, which, by the way, I've been to Buenos Aires. It's a great city. If you like world-class cities, it really is. The food in Argentina. The food in Argentina is what I remember most. I was just there a couple of years ago, and the steaks in Argentina are ridiculous. They're like a foot thick and 2 feet long. It's like a Fred Flintstone steak. I'm not kidding you. That's what it is, a Fred Flintstone steak. And the prices were great. The wine was great. But I digress. At any rate, during his trip to Buenos Aires, President Obama took time to offer an apology. How shocking. For being slow to human rights for the United States. It's clip 2. Go.
It's humbling to join President Macri at this poignant and beautiful memorial in honor of the victims of the Argentinian military dictatorship and the suffering their families have endured. It takes courage for a society to address uncomfortable truths about the darker parts of its past. Confronting crimes committed by our own leaders, by our own people. That can be divisive and frustrating, but it's essential to moving forward. There's been controversy about the policies of the United States early in those dark days, and the United States, when it reflects on what happened here, has to examine its own policies as well in its own past. Democracies have to have the courage to acknowledge when we don't live up to the ideals that we stand for, when we've been slow to speak out for human rights, and that was the case here. Today, in response to a request from President Macri and to continue helping the families of the victims find some of the truth and justice they deserve. I can announce that the United States government will declassify even more documents from that period, including for the first time military and intelligence records, because I believe we have a responsibility to confront the past with honesty and transparency.
Yeah, slow to react to human rights, apologizing for America again. In the Western Hemisphere, where America has kept the Western Hemisphere safe from interlopers, including places like Argentina benefiting clearly from America being on this side of the line. And yet Barack Obama always needs to make an apology. How about this? How about be quicker to react to the genocide facing Christians in the Middle East? How about that? The genocide being faced by Christians in Syria, in Iraq, Pakistan, and southern Turkey. That would be something we could focus on. I know that John Kerry finally came on and gave the bare minimum requirement to say it's genocide, but then, devalued that comment by equivocating and diminishing its value. So I'm sorry. Another empty apology from this president on behalf of America. I am sick and tired of hearing this president apologize for America. Because we didn't recognize the problems internally in Argentina fast enough? This is our latest place to stop and get on bended knee? Enough. I'm ready for an American leader that believes in America. I'm ready for an American leader, whoever that may be, who respects this country, the traditions we have, the people we have, the culture, the language, and respect those borders. I look forward to that president, whoever that may be, and certainly hope that it's not too late. Speaking of follies by this president, this has to be a bit of a difficult situation. Loretta Lynch and the Justice Department has charged 7 Iranian hackers in a series of cyber attacks against banks and a small dam outside of New York City. Yeah, this has to shock the president after all his, swooning and swanning for the Iranians. Clip 3, listen to this, go.
Today, we have unsealed an indictment against 7 alleged experienced hackers employed by computer security companies working on behalf of the Iranian government, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. A federal grand jury in Manhattan found that these 7 individuals conspired together and with others to conduct a series of cyber attacks against civilian targets in the United States financial services industry that in total, or in all, in sum, cost the victims tens of millions of dollars.
Hackers infiltrated infrastructure, as alleged, taking over computers that control the water levels at a dam near New York City. So those sound like plot lines of a movie, but they're not. They're real crimes committed by real people in the real world.
The message of this case is that we will work together to shrink the world and impose costs on those people so that no matter where they are, we will try to reach them. And no matter how hard they work to hide their identity and their tradecraft, we will find ways to pierce that shield and identify them. That's the message of this case. That's why it's so important that we bring this case.
That was Loretta Lynch speaking along with Preet Bharara, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. So as we continue to make nice for the Iranians and make sure that we're all good friends and we trust them with all that they do, they're sending hackers over to mess with our dams, to mess with our money, just to mess with us, period. Leading from behind, it is something special, isn't it? Leading from behind is certainly something special. Let's see here. What else should we talk about today on this Free for All Friday? How about the battle between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump over who can, basically, insult the other one more? And their wives got involved in a little bit of this food fight here. It just seems completely counterproductive to me. A complete waste of time. And maybe Ted Cruz would be better served if he didn't address this nonsense. Now, I'm serious about maybe he should take the high road out of this deal instead of returning fire every time. I don't think anybody's winning on this deal. I think it's a waste of time. It's a distraction. Clearly, looking at the headlines from this week, we have better things to talk about than people throwing jabs at each other. Now, of course, it started with a Cruz super PAC putting up some picture of Melania Trump, a nude picture, blurred out, of course, from a photo shoot some time ago. All right, it's 41 after on a Free-for-All Friday. We'll be right back.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
All right, welcome back to it. It's an interesting case. We're going to do some follow-up now with you here. We did the case here a while back of a gentleman who was handing out pamphlets at a county courthouse. Pamphlets about, jury duty, information about America, Michigan, the laws, and so forth. He was arrested, charged with felonies for jury tampering and other such nonsense. It was overkill, in my estimation, to say the least. His attorney is David Kallman, who is also the senior legal counsel for the Great Lakes Justice Center. David, welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Steve. Great to be on.
Hey, glad to have you here, as always. Go ahead and give me an idea. First of all, give the listeners who don't know this story just a quick thumbnail background on what happened and how we ended up here.
Sure. Our client, Keith Wood, was standing out in front of the Mecosta County Courthouse on the public sidewalk, handing out a flyer from an organization that notifies people of their power and authority as jurors to vote their conscience on a particular case and to acquit someone, even if they might technically be guilty of a crime, for various reasons. Anything from mercy, just having mercy on the person, to they don't think it's a fair or a just verdict in a particular case. This flyer said nothing about any case going on at the time or any particular defendant. It was just general information. And the judge did not like this, and the prosecutors, so they end up sending out a sheriff, a deputy, and a DNR officer who was armed in full uniform. And they kept trying to get him to stop, and he wouldn't stop because he said, well, what am I doing illegally? And they wouldn't tell him. Finally, they got him. They threatened him with arrest, got him inside the courthouse, and then the judge had him arrested for jury tampering. And then that's when they set that ridiculous $150,000 bond.
What was that bond again?
$150,000, 10%. So our client, and this is 2 days before Thanksgiving, is a father with 7 children, no criminal history, going back or anything, owns his own business and home in the community. And the prosecutor actually said he was worried about flight risk. It was just ridiculous. And so he had to post $15,000 on a credit card. Fortunately, he had it. It was the only credit card he has for his business, and it has a $15,000 limit. So
because if you go to a bail bondsman, if people don't know this, if you go to a bail bondsman and the bail bondsman puts up whatever the money is, say $15,000 in this case, a large chunk of that never comes back to you.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's how the bail bondsman makes his money. He puts up the 10% or makes the guarantee, but then he keeps a big chunk of that, of that down payment, and that's how he gets paid. So you, even if you're innocent in this case, or you've been way overcharged and the bond is way overkill, you still pay that money. Luckily, he had the money, which is good news, but it's just important for people to understand how the system works. Okay.
Right.
So at that time, you and I spoke back then thinking, now how in the world does a guy get arrested for handing out pamphlets? He had to have had some contact with people there. He had to be known. He couldn't just be random, a stranger, to get that kind of treatment now, could he?
Well, he's not common. He's not a public figure up there or anything like that. He had been called to jury duty himself and had appeared and had asked some questions, but he didn't cause any trouble or anything, but he was there. I think in general, the court of people up there kind of knew who he was, but it wasn't from any kind of problems he had or any disputes or anything like that. So, no, there really wasn't any history. And he didn't know the defendant. He did not know that person. He didn't know the defense attorney, who was there for the trial that day. He was just handing out this general information pamphlet.
And so he gets arrested. So take us to the next step then, obviously. And not only is he put up this $15,000 right before Thanksgiving and have these problems and so forth, you get into court. What's the justification for them making this charge, and then where do we go from there?
Well, he faced 2 counts. The first was a jury tampering charge, which is still in place. It's a misdemeanor. And that's essentially saying somebody interferes with a juror sitting on a case and hearing a case. Well, obviously, how is that even possible? No jury existed at the time. People had been summoned to appear in the jury pool. They might have been picked if a case had gone forward, but no case actually ever went forward. No jury was actually picked that day. So it's almost laughable how could you tamper with an entity that does not exist? There was no jury. The second charge was an obstruction of justice felony charge under the common law. Under Michigan law, it's not used often anymore, but there are common law crimes that go back hundreds and hundreds of years that if there's not a statute dealing with a particular area, somebody could be charged under the common law. And the prosecutor charged him with a 5-year felony for obstructing justice.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so only a couple of minutes left here, but at some point, somebody came to their senses. Obviously, you were there, and we're on the line with David Kallman, the senior legal counsel for the Great Lakes Justice Center. Somebody came to their senses, David. Bring this to its conclusion.
Right. Well, we filed a motion to dismiss the entire case, both charges, based on, number one, just the clear language of these statutes that he shouldn't be charged, and number two, the violation of his fundamental First Amendment free speech rights. This is a clear violation. The highest protection of any kind of speech in our law is for speaking and handing out pamphlets on a public sidewalk. It's the absolute highest protection. It's just outrageous what's going on. So we filed a motion. Oral arguments were on Wednesday, and the circuit judge who's sitting in on the case now is the district judge, because the district judge had to recuse himself. She ruled that the obstruction of justice charge had to be dismissed because, as I said, there was already a statutory crime, the jury tampering, in place. So the prosecutor was wrong to bring a felony obstruction of justice charge. So she threw it out, which was wonderful. That's a big, huge win for our client. He was ecstatic that he's not facing a felony anymore. However, she left the jury tampering charge in place pending further hearings and evidence being put in the record so she could rule on the First Amendment. So we haven't lost on that issue yet, but that's still pending.
All right. So when the next chapter gets here, though, David, come back and join us.
Absolutely. We'll keep you up to date, Steve. Thanks a lot.
They're defending free speech on a Free-for-All Friday. David Kallman, thank you so much. This is The Steve Gruber Show.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is The Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me, gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
If you're just plugging in, it is Free-for-All Friday. Thanks for climbing aboard the train. We're leaving the station now. You can call in 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. I look forward to your input on this Free-for-All Friday. The Common Sense Hotline open for your input. Tough news to start this second hour. The news that the family of Alexander and Sasha Pinskowski hoped would never come. The siblings, the brother and sister, standing in line at the Delta ticket gate in Brussels to check in for their flight to New York. Alexander was talking to his mother on the phone when the line went dead. They were not heard from again. 3 days later, word has come from Belgian authorities that these people are not among the living. They asked for continued prayers, but the stories are emerging of loved ones struggle to know more. But it seems that Sasha and Alexander were among those killed in Brussels. Among the more than 300 maimed and murdered by Islamic terrorists. Radical Islamic terrorists. And there are others on the list from America. Barth Magome, or Magome maybe, Bart McGomb from Athens, Georgia. His girlfriend checked to make sure that he made it to the train, and it arrived at the airport at 7:30. It had. His flight back to America scheduled at 10:30. I don't think he ever made it, she said. I've not heard from him. Neither have his family. They've been to the hospitals, everywhere they can think of, but they've not heard from Bart. They say he was a good communicator. He had booked his flight to come back to the States. So more pain, more heartbreak, more devastation and bloodshed in the name of Islam, in the name of the Prophet. And we twiddle our thumbs for the most part, it seems. In fact, we do worse, it seems, than twiddle our thumbs. It seems that our president is tone deaf. He has not one clue how to behave when a world tragedy occurs. Instead of doing the right thing and getting on Air Force One and coming back to Washington to deal with what is really Belgium's 9/11, no, he stays in Cuba at the behest of a dictator, a 2-bit dictator, I might add, and goes to a baseball game where he does the wave. Yeah, he sits there with Raul Castro watching a baseball game. He twiddles away the time. He made his cursory little statement about the Brussels bombings and, remaining strong and eradicating ISIS and blah, blah, blah. Who cares? He was even filmed laughing and joking and carrying on joyfully. Could you imagine if Tony Blair or Prime Minister Mikhail of Belgium, more accurately, if they had just gone to a soccer match, the afternoon of 9/11 and, just waved and carried on and played, or, even after San Bernardino, and just played and laughed and carried on. Obama said something about, not responding with fear, blah, blah, blah. What a joke. If the British Prime Minister or the Belgian Prime Minister had done anything remotely like that, we would have gone bananas, and rightfully so. The President of the United States, at least before this president, has been considered the leader of the free world and therefore the leader of NATO. Belgium, being a member of NATO, you would think that Barack Obama has something more substantial to offer, to say, to do, a better image. But no, he's eating hot dogs and doing the wave and watching a baseball game in the sun with his sunglasses on, kicked back and having a big old time. And it's just like so much of his foreign policy, it smacks of that old adage, leading from behind with a hot dog. He's something about getting on with your normal life. We are strong, our values are right. Nothing. This does nothing except embolden terrorists to do more. It emboldens these people to do more because they are empowered now, because they know that our president is a weakling. They know that our president, rather than be bothered from his golf game or a good day out at the ballpark, he'll just go ahead and continue doing that because he can't be bothered. He's having too much fun with Air Force One. He's having too much fun being president. All these people running around when he snaps his fingers. And they talk about the narcissism of Donald Trump. Good God. Look at the TV. Donald Trump's narcissism? Donald Trump's arrogance? Please. Donald Trump could get lessons from this guy. ISIS does have power over us, Mr. President, because of their incredibly violent attacks on people, the fear they're putting into people. The United States is certainly not immune to this. I mean, if they see the United States president kicked back and relaxed, what's to be concerned about? Remember when Do you remember when James Foley had his head sawed off? You know, Obama made his quick speech. It was dreadful. And then, you know, minutes later, he was teeing off on the golf course and laughing with some mates. Remember that? With his friends. He was just hanging out. James Foley got his head sawed off on a video, passed all over the world. But Barack, 7 minutes later, couldn't be deterred from his tee time. Tee time's more important. And for the record, he's a lousy golfer. He's terrible. Just lousy. All right, let's quickly get to Frank on the line. Frank, welcome to Free for All Friday.
Hi, Steve. You sure got him pegged. Did you see what he did yesterday?
Hard to say.
Our great commander-in-chief did the tango yesterday in Argentina. He was partying and doing the tango. And only Fox apparently covered it. But it was an absolute disgrace. All this stuff is going on, and this guy's partying on. And today, the commander of the free world is going to the Antilles Island. He's going to have fun at a resort today.
No,
so
why wouldn't
partying on, you know, when it happened in Paris, that terrible thing in Paris, he didn't even go. He was the only one of the major nations of the world that didn't show up.
Frank, thanks for checking in. I greatly appreciate it. It's Free for All Friday on The Steve Gruber Show.
The Steve Gruber Show. American values with Midwestern common sense.
Cruising down the center of the two-way street, wondering who is really in the driver's seat. Minding my business, along comes Big Brother. Said, son, you better get home.
All right, welcome back to it on this Free for All Friday. Steve Gruber with you on the Steve Gruber Show. Glad to have you on board. We're working our way through hour number 2 here. A lot of emotions out there. I mean, if you reflect on those images of the president doing the wave and cajoling with a dictator, a murderous dictator, I might add, while Americans lay dead in Brussels, 300 maimed and murdered, and he gives his standard nonsensical answer, and that's all we get. So, there you go. Here's something else for you to shift gears to something else of importance here today that has been going on for a long time. In a blistering rebuke of the Internal Revenue Service, a Cincinnati-based federal appeals court has ordered the IRS to quit stalling and to produce the names of organizations it targeted based on their political leanings. It is about time. It is a unanimous ruling by a 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 6th Circuit. It gave the IRS just 2 weeks to turn over the documents sought as part of a class action lawsuit brought by the NorCal Tea Party Patriots. The lawyers in the Department of Justice have a long and storied tradition of defending the nation's interests and enforcing its laws, read the opinion in part. The conduct of the IRS's attorneys in the district court falls outside that tradition. Now, from one of the attorneys, president for the Citizens for Self-Governance, we are pleased that the 6th Circuit had smacked down the IRS and its thuggish Department of Justice lawyers, adding that he believes the Internal Revenue Service is an unredeemable organization. Unredeemable organization. All right, so the NorCal Tea Party, just to give you some background here, sued the IRS in 2013 after a Treasury inspector concluded the IRS had unfairly singled out for extra scrutiny conservative groups applying for tax-exempt status. Barack Obama used the IRS as a weapon against his political opponents. That's the bottom line. The Obama administration, whether he directed it personally himself, which he probably didn't because I'm sure he was golfing, but he set forward this series of events and the atmosphere to create an atmosphere where political opponents could be attacked by the IRS. Now, for their civil suit, the NorCal Tea Party Patriots had requested information from the IRS detailing the organizations targeted, information they say they have not received or has been wrapped up in legal red tape since 2013, and the panel of the federal judges flat out agreed. I mean, this is a hard slap. Now, here's another part of the written decision from the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati. The lawsuit has progressed as slowly as the underlying applications themselves. At every turn, the IRS has resisted the plaintiff's request for information regarding the IRS's treatment of the plaintiff class, eventually to the open frustration of the district court. Now, the IRS has pushed back on these allegations and maintained that its handling over the names and organizations on its Be on the Lookout list would violate privacy laws. A lower district court has twice ordered the IRS to produce the documents. In response, the IRS has sought a writ of mandamus to block the order. But Tuesday's angry reprimand by the federal appeals court is clear. Judge Raymond Kethledge wrote this, and this is important because this goes to the heart of how we run our republic. It really does. It goes to the heart of how we in holding people accountable. And you cannot use the IRS to go after your political opponents. All right, from Judge Raymond Kethledge now. The district court ordered production of those lists and did so again over an IRS motion to reconsider, yet almost a year later. The IRS still has not complied with the court's orders. Instead, the IRS now seeks from this court a writ of mandamus, an extraordinary remedy reserved to correct only the clearest abuses of power by a district court. We deny the petition. The panel of judges again gave the IRS just 2 weeks to hand over the documents. In the 17-page opinion, Kethledge laid out a list of requests NorCal made to the IRS that were either ignored entirely or stuck in a legal runaround. In one, the IRS demanded NorCal provided 3,000 pages of what the Inspector General called unnecessary information. In turn, the IRS then claimed it would be unduly burdensome for it to provide such information. Let me tell you something. This is an important decision and a big case. Now, they may try to appeal elsewhere, but I don't believe they can at this point. At this point, they're caught. At this point, the IRS is caught, as well they should be. As well they should be. All right, catching up, if you're just jumping on board, at least 2 Americans now confirmed dead in Brussels in the terror attacks there. There might be 1 or 2 more. But a brother and sister working in Brussels killed in the attack. And it's been confirmed now that they were standing in line, the young man talking to his mother when the line just went dead. The family has been informed, of course. The family has been informed of the death of these 2 young people. And this happened at the time, of course, when Barack Obama was out, playing glad hand with a dictator in Cuba, a murderous dictator, while the family of Alexander and Sasha Pinskowski were hearing nothing from their relatives. And now we know that that's because they were in line at the Delta counter waiting to fly home. Just, it's maddening, frankly. It's Free for All Friday on the Steve Gruber Show. I'll be right back.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
I wanna fly like an eagle to the sea. Fly like an eagle, let my spirit carry me. I want to.
All right, welcome back to it. It is Free for All Friday. The hotline is open. It's got your name on it. Actually, it's got my name on it, but that's not important now. What's important now is that the number is 888-900-9966. 888-900-9966. Take a detour now into the problems affecting Flint, its water supply, its lead levels, the cleanup, and the future. Where do we go from here? The governor came out with a 75-point plan. It comes with a lot of cash. And despite all of that, Democrats still calling for his head. Our next guest is a Democrat. Well, we don't know if he's calling for his head, but we're going to find out. Jeff Irwin, a member of the Michigan House of Representatives, representing the 53rd District. Jeff, welcome back.
Good morning, Steve.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. So, all right, give me first of all your assessment of the governor's 75-point plan in Flint.
Well, I think it's great whenever he's coming out with these plans. It shows that he's intending on taking some action. I do feel that the state's response has lacked the urgency and completeness that I would like to see, and have been making those kinds of suggestions all along. But I do think there are some good items in that 75-point plan, and I also think that the task force report that he commissioned and that was released this week has some good suggestions in that as well. And I'm hopeful that the select committee that I'm working on with my colleagues is going to do a proper investigation of what happened, so we can try to take some of these action steps to prevent another tragedy like this.
Are you among those that are asking for the governor to resign?
I'm not.
Okay, but your leadership is. But you're not on that side of the fence at this point.
No, I really felt that when I was given the opportunity to be on the Flint Water Investigatory Committee for the legislature, that I needed to step away from, any determination about whether or not it was time for the governor to go, and really just focus on getting to the facts, trying to figure out exactly what happened when, get a full forensic analysis so that we can really get to the meat of what do we need to do to prevent this from happening again. And so I felt I needed to step out of that consideration until I had a chance to really just dig in fully. That's my work right now, is to get to the facts.
Fair enough. Jeff Irwin, member of the Michigan House of Representatives, a Democrat from the 53rd District. Jeff, let me ask you this. I've done a lot of reading on this, as a lot of people have. And the one thing I keep coming back to is the federal copper and lead rule, which, if I'm reading this right, the Flint Water Department violated federal law the moment they switched from the Detroit water supply to their temporary supply, waiting for their new system to be built, because they didn't have anti-corrosives in the water to prevent from happening exactly what did end up happening, and they did not have a written plan, both of which would be blatant violations of federal law. Now, so my take on this recently has been there was incompetence at the local level. They believed they could handle taking over the water supply, which proved not to be true. But then there was indifference, it seems to me, from both the state level and the federal level for a long period of time. What is your assessment looking at it?
Well, if you read the task force report that came out this week that the governor commissioned, these are the people that the governor put out there to investigate this. What they said about the issue you bring up is that the idea that there was failure at all levels of government, it is true, but it is not fair to say that the blame, so to speak, is equally apportioned. The governor's task force said the responsibility here really lies mostly at the state level, because it was the DEQ who was responsible for administering the lead and copper rule. They were the ones who bungled and made a number of mistakes and misinterpretations of the lead and copper rule, among other water quality rules. And also, they pointed out that it was the policy of emergency management, of getting rid of local democracy, that really led to that indifference and led to that disconnection between the local people who were coming forward with bottles of brown, smelly water saying, this water isn't right. And they would come to their local elected officials, and they would come to the emergency manager, and their local elected officials were powerless to help them. Even though they passed resolutions to try to switch back to DWSD, those were ignored. And the emergency manager wasn't different.
No, I know.
The governor said, look, I'm your elected, I've not abrogated your democracy. I'm your elected official. He ignored them, too. So that's
Jeff,
what the governor's task force said.
Hold on, and I get all that.
Please. Yeah.
But the suggestion somehow that these emergency managers are somehow to blame for all these problems. Flint was in a financial crisis because of 50 years of mismanagement, fiscally, socially. The whole damn city was run poorly, and somebody had to step in and do something. So this notion to demonize emergency managers, to me, is it's beyond the pale. Flint was a disaster. It's still recovering from decades of mismanagement. Am I wrong about that?
I think that the state had a obligation to get involved in Flint and to, help right their financial ship. And I think that is little disagreement about the idea that the old emergency manager law, the emergency financial manager law we had, that still had some levers of control and accountability at the local level, so that the local officials had some ability to keep things on a level and to provide.
The problem is with Flint and other places is
that is key.
There was no accountability for decades. That's the problem. That's how we ended up there. We were there. It wasn't because the governor wanted to go, hey, I want to take over Flint today. Come on. I mean, you know that.
That's not what I'm suggesting. No, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that local government is important, and it's important because it's eyes and ears on the ground. It's important because they have a personal connection to the people who are being served. And it's important because it's another level of accountability. It's another check and balance. And when we completely, as a legislature, as a state, swept that off the table with the changes in the emergency manager law, that made our emergency manager law weaker in the sense that there's less local accountability. And that was central to the failing in Flint. That was central to the indifference that you mentioned at the state level to the concerns of the local people there in Flint. So, that's what the government task force report said. They said we need to get better water regulations. We need to get better testing protocols. We need to improve our emergency manager law to inject a little bit more accountability at the local level.
And I don't disagree with that. But if Flint hadn't squandered its own resources for decades, much like many other municipalities, Flint is not alone in squandering, and something has to happen.
If you want to go down that road, I think we should. Let's talk about cities like Flint, who at one time, 80 years ago, were booming and bustling, and they were doing great. And what happened was, because of very large economic changes that were worldwide, this whole effect of globalization, where the auto plants moved from cities like Flint and cities like Detroit, they moved further away, eventually they moved to the south, then they moved overseas. These cities were on the receiving end of huge changes in the global economy that were contributing to their downfall. So let me just give you an example. The city of Detroit went from 1.8 million people, almost 2 million people, all the way down to 600,000. And now we're saying that their inability to pay their pension obligations is because of mismanagement. That's just not accurate. Mismanagement and incompetence is a part of the story.
There is some truth to that, because Hold on, you got your part, and I'll give mine. You're right. It went from 1.8 million people to 650,000. That's correct. It's the only city in world history to go above 1 million and come back below it, ever. And so they have obligations to keep. But you know as well as I do that sweetheart deals were made between public sector unions and politicians to give them deals that were unsustainable, that were too big, that were, golden parachutes for everybody, that we're now picking up the bill for. So there was mismanagement. You're not going to sit there and tell me there wasn't mismanagement. Now, hold on. Can you stick through the break? I'd like to continue the conversation. Jeff Irwin on the line, Democrat from the 53rd District of the Michigan House of Representatives. It's Free for All Friday on the Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
All right, it's Free for All Friday. Your phone number to join the conversation, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. Jeff Irwin sticking with us, a Democrat from the Michigan House of Representatives from the 53rd District. The conversation being, mismanagement of funds and so forth. And Jeff, I would say this. Obviously, Flint's population has dropped, so has Detroit's. But a lot of the spending habits weren't reined in, I don't think, because there was always this notion that, somebody come along to help them out. And here we are about to bail Flint out, because you look at the numbers being spent. What are we talking about, $500 million? I mean, there's all sorts of numbers being flown around, but tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And not just to remediate the problem with the water lines and to clean up the infrastructure there, but for investment in infrastructure beyond that, investment in, job creation and so on and so forth. And my question then becomes, what happens when Muskegon calls? And Kalamazoo calls, and Owasso calls, and other cities, including right there where you stake your flag. Ann Arbor has a toxic plume of a different sort in the ground, as you know, creating problems with groundwater. I mean, it's not an endless well of money, Jeff. What do we do?
Yeah, this Flint situation, I think, has been a wake-up call for a lot of communities about the state of their water infrastructure. The engineering, the civil engineering community, the public works community has been sounding the alarm about this for as long as I've been involved in government. Here in America, we really built an amazing system of public works sewers, roads, new schools. We built all of these amazing systems that contributed to our economic prosperity and the amazing growth that we experienced during the second half of the 20th century. And now all those investments are starting to get old. A lot of these sewer systems, a lot of these public works departments, they were built, back during the Roosevelt era, and we've never really gone back and said, we need to invest in our sewers, we need to have good water infrastructure, this is essential for our future prosperity, and simply done that. And so now those costs are adding up. It's sort of like what we've done with our roads. We really kind of took a decade or two off of maintaining our roads properly, and now we're
Jeff,
realizing,
I appreciate all that.
That's really expensive.
I appreciate all that. You're sidestepping the question. The question is, if we give $500 million to Flint, how do we give $500 million to Saginaw or Kalamazoo or Muskegon? We don't have enough money to do that. And we start talking about, we're going to do some economic investment. We're going to do some early childhood education investment. We're going to spend some money here. So, Jeff, we don't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
And so when the next city shows up, the next one, the next one.
Universal pre-K across the state of Michigan. If we wanted to make that a priority, if we really wanted to invest in early childhood education, we could do that. And I would agree with you, though, that what's happened in Flint is becoming very, very expensive. And we cannot afford to poison another city in the state of Michigan so that we have to have a long-term investment in health assessments and
here's the problem
with the health problems that have been created in Flint.
Here's the problem, Jeff, and you just put your finger on it, and I'm glad you did. Jeff Irwin on the line with me, a Democrat from the Michigan House 53rd District. The problem environmentally is multi-dimensional in Flint and everywhere else. It's not just the water. It's the paint. It's those General Motors plants that put acetone and other chemicals into the ground. You know that. And there are chemical problems. In fact, there are cities in Michigan right now, from what I read, that have higher incidence of elevated lead in their blood, higher than Flint. And because it comes from other environmental factors, including paint, because lead-based paint was not outlawed until 1978, and you have a lot of communities in the state that are older that have a tremendous amount of lead-based paint. So what are you going to do the next time? You still really haven't answered it. We can talk about pre-K education. That's all fine and well. We still have to have a way to pay for these things, and we haven't addressed the problem. What do we do with the next city that comes along and says, hey, we're broke, and by the way, we have children with high lead levels? How are we going to get there?
Well, this is going to take, some public effort, and I think that what Flint has done is it has really exposed, how much investment is necessary at the local level around issues like water infrastructure, and also just how expensive it can get if you get those issues wrong. So, I do think this is a big challenge for us. How do we handle all of these costs? Well, let's take it a piece at a time. If we're looking at issues like water infrastructure, let's beef up our efforts to assist local governments in getting ahead of these problems. Several years ago, back during the 90s, if you remember, we had a real bipartisan coming together on the Clean Michigan Initiative, a ballot initiative in 1998, to put out a large investment to invest in our environment and protecting the Great Lakes and cleaning up toxic sites that companies had abandoned. That was a great effort, and both sides came together to fund those costs. And we expended those dollars over the course of many years, and now that well is dry. Maybe it's time to go back to the public and make a similar investment like that again in our water infrastructure. But there's no question that there are hard choices to make about priorities, and the legislature has to get to work on it. Hopefully, this Flint situation has been a wake-up call for communities and the legislature to get serious about these things. If you don't take care of these foundational, fundamental elements of our economic system, like clean water, like good transportation, if you don't take care of those, then the economy isn't going to thrive.
Well, it all starts with the economy. So I'm going to give you one last question here, Jeff Irwin. What about NAFTA? Is that the root of the problems here of plants going to Mexico and so forth? Because you talked about that, how Flint's shrinking, Detroit's shrinking, Michigan losing manufacturing jobs going overseas. Is NAFTA one of the root problems to you? You've got about 1 minute.
Is it one of them? I think it's one of them. I do think that our trade policy nationally has been less than optimal for the upper Midwest. I don't think that's a controversial statement. And I think that there's more our government could be doing to promote fair trade over unfettered free trade when we allow other countries to compete unfairly with us and therefore beat our companies because of lax labor and environmental rules. I think that's a mistake for our nation. And so
you know what? That's spoken.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's spoken like a true Donald Trump supporter. I'm just joking.
maybe a Bernie voter. I don't know.
Yeah. But I greatly appreciate it. I do. I understand. I got to run, Jeff, but I greatly appreciate it. Stand-up guy you were today, and I appreciate you coming on here because you know we're going to have tough questions and a good conversation. But it was a good conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, absolutely. You have a great morning, and onward and upward.
There you have it. Jeff Irwin, member of the Michigan House of Representatives, representing the 53rd District, a Democrat. You see, Democrats get a fair shake here just like everybody else, despite what some folks on the left might lead you to believe. It's all fair. On Free for All Friday on the Steve Gruber Show.
This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
And welcome to it, my friends. It is Free for All Friday. I appreciate you making me a part of it. Free for All Friday means you can pick up the phone and call 888-900-9966. 888-900-9966 and get involved with the conversation. You know, it's kind of hard to believe that President Barack Obama was off playing with a dictator at a baseball game, doing the wave and eating hot dogs and having a big old time. When Brussels, Belgium suffered its own 9/11, and the president did almost nothing. Almost nothing. He offered his same old sort of, we need to stay focused and we need to blah, 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 blah. So, you just tune it out. It gets to the point you just tune it out because it doesn't mean anything anymore. And you wonder at some point whether it ever did. And he's down there, at a baseball game enjoying himself. Sasha and Alexander Pinskowski, living in New York, they're Dutch nationals living in New York. They're home. In Brussels, they were killed. Other Americans may well have been killed as well, because they're not quite sure yet. And our president, the leader of the free world, the leader of NATO, that Belgium is a member of NATO. So therefore, he should step up and make comments. Can you imagine if Tony Blair was out playing at a soccer match after 9/11, even within a week of 9/11, was out seen smiling and giggling and carrying on, what the ramifications would have been? It would have been a huge blowback, and as well it should have been. There is a direct connection between the attack in Brussels to Michigan. A young man from West Michigan, Sebastian Bellin, was injured badly during the attack. He survived. He played basketball at Oakland University, and he was there during the terrorist attacks waiting to fly home to New York City from a business deal, and he was interviewed on Good Morning America from his hospital bed. It's clip 1. Go.
I just saw, I remember seeing an explosion, the first explosion near the pharmacy at the airport. And I turned my head and I saw all these people running. And when I got there, I was, I think I blacked out for a little bit. And I remember seeing 2 little kids to my right, and the little hands were up in the air. And then the whole time I was just trying to tell myself I'm going to make it. And when I got got in that ambulance, then I knew I was good. I guess that's the point. When I was in the ambulance, then I knew I was all right. But until then, I got no idea. So that's it. I'm here to fight another day, and I just didn't want my girls to grow up without a dad.
And that day, I'm unfortunately, I believe that day is closer for us than any of us would like to believe. On this Good Friday, it's hard to believe, but a day like that is coming to America again as ISIS continues to find ways to penetrate the soft underbelly of America. As ISIS finds ways to penetrate the soft underbelly of Europe, obviously. Now, 6 people were arrested here overnight in a large police operation in Brussels. At least 6 arrested. The French and the Belgians carrying out raids. There's news that a northwest Paris raid foiled a planned attack there, according to the French Interior Minister. The French plot was at an advanced stage of preparation and was discovered after a French national, described as being at a high level in the plot, was arrested. No idea whether there's any connection between the plots in France and Brussels. But as we have learned, there are about 600 ISIS fighters scattered across Europe, which means they don't have to be connected. They're looking for the easiest target with the maximum damage, and they're going to go after it. So it would be easy to conceive that at this moment, there are dozens of cells operating in Europe, and likely right here in the United States as well, and possibly right here at home in Michigan. It's an easy thing to conceive. We have had border security problems in this country for years and years. It certainly predates this administration. George W. Bush did nothing to secure the border, nor did Bill Clinton. Nor did those before him, for the most part. America's porous border has been that way for decades now. And basically, all you have to do is take a shot at getting across the border, which your chances apparently are pretty good. And in Europe, of course, they're welcoming millions of refugees. Germany opening its arm to 1 million. Many from war-torn nations like Syria and Iraq, Afghanistan. And with spotty background checks, you don't know what you're letting in. Which is disconcerting to say the least. Disconcerting to say the least. All right, quickly, let's go to Jennifer on the line, on the hotline today. Jennifer, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I would like to correct you on one thing. This man is not a leader. He's a narcissistic, pure evil individual who wants to impose his will on everybody else. He thinks he's a leader in his own mind, but I have not enough words to tell you how much contempt I hold him in. And I think a lot of the world agrees with me.
Well, we've got some time, Jennifer. You could go ahead and name some. No, that's fine. You're upset, I can tell.
Upset? I haven't had one day's peace since this man has been elected, because we have one crisis after another. He has no consideration, no empathy, no thought for the plight that the American people are in. None. He is pure evil, and his administration is pure evil, and that's what he is promoting. And it boggles my mind. I cannot comprehend why people are so stupid that they go there and they clap for this man or Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. It just boggles my mind, and I'm starting to lose a lot of respect for the Republican Party. I'll tell you that right now. I like Ted Cruz, but these two guys have got to quit fighting.
I agree, Jennifer.
The whole damn system, just the guy on the street could do a better job.
It's Free for All Friday on the Steve Gruber Show.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
Every day I get in the queue to get on the bus that takes me to you. sit and smile.
That is absolutely precious. Absolutely precious. Okay, the magic bus thing, I mean. All right, here we go. Heading through hour number 3 here on the Free for All Friday edition of the Steve Gruber Show. You can join the conversation. The phone line, 888-900-9966. Be like Jennifer. Although I think she needs to come up with an opinion. She seems a little shy. 888-900-9966. So here's Hillary Clinton's solution. I can't make this stuff up. All right? I can't make this stuff up. This is from yesterday. Calling for an online propaganda campaign to combat Islamic terrorists. Hillary Clinton called for America and her allies to debate Muslims on the internet in order to prevent their transition into Islamists. Yep. Hashtag no terrorists. That should do it. And it means waging online battles with extremists to discredit their ideology, expose their lies, and counter their appeals to potential recruits in the West and around the world, says Hillary Clinton, the leading Democratic candidate for president of the United States, suggesting that governmental operations take to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and online discussion groups to win over the hearts and minds of Muslims. This is the plan. And she said this. She said this at Stanford. I mean, those people just look at her and go, what is she talking about? Is she okay? Is her medicine right? Hey, Hillary, psst, Mrs. Psst, did you take your medicine today? Yeah, she said this, of course, after Brussels' version of 9/11 had occurred. Essentially calling for an extension of President Barack Obama's national security strategy, if that's what you'd like to call it. Let's lead from behind. Let's hashtag no more terrorists. No political paradigm shifts were called for with respect to the effects of political correctness, rules of engagement, and military codes of conduct, of course, or existing immigration and refugee policies. Let's just do more of the same. And described herself as offering strong, smart, and steady leadership. This is leadership. We have a comment from her on CBS News, very confusing in a moment, but first, to the hotline we go. Kim is on the line in Perry today. Kim, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
I want to comment on Representative Irwin's comments. Michigan has a long way to go. I just came from Florida, where they have a Republican governor, and they are so far ahead as far as taking care of their state and making it look good and presentable to people that travel here for tourism. I just want to mention that what we need to do, what we need to work on as a state is bringing business back, which means we need to offer incentives, we need to offer tax incentives, because with industry, with business will come the tax dollars to fix the infrastructure, to do the programs that we want with VPK, to make the state look beautiful again, to do the programs we want. But we have to have industry, we have to have business, so we have to provide incentives for them to come here.
There's no question about that. You're exactly right. No, you're exactly right. We have to have the economy here. You have to have the base so that, here's the thing. One of the things that I think is the base is the energy economy. But right now, Barack Obama and soon possibly Hillary Clinton are in full-on war against coal and natural gas and oil, trying to destroy the energy sector. America has had an energy renaissance, my friends, and it's one of the places where we develop the opportunity to make mass amounts of money, and therefore tax money, and therefore get ourselves out of debt, pay for some of these social programs, so on and so forth. Kim, great call. I greatly appreciate it.
Steve, it's a lie, too, that coal and oil pollutes the environment and that the so-called green energy resources doesn't damage the environment at all. I know firsthand that wind generation and solar panels in large-scale operations kill more birds than any oil and gas and coal industry does. So it's a big lie.
Well, I know that, Kim. Thank you for the call. In fact, we call windmills the Cousinart for birds of prey. The Cousinart for birds of prey. Thanks for checking in, Kim. I greatly appreciate it. It's Free for All Friday here on the Steve Gruber Show. The phone number, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You can jump online and join the conversation. Do I have time to get that Hillary Clinton thing in? Let's go with that. What's that? All right, let's go with Hillary Clinton on CBS News. Very strange. Listen to this quick conversation from a couple of days ago. Go.
Secretary Clinton, you've often said it's not enough to contain ISIS. You have to defeat ISIS. What is your definition of defeat here? And do you think Europe has a handle on what's happening there?
That's a really important question. And I don't know that Europe has yet fully come to grips with the threat that ISIS poses. And remember, there are other groups that are ISIS-like that are, intent upon radical jihadist terrorist attacks. So we've got to defeat ISIS, and that means being in very close cooperation.
Secretary Clinton, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to leave you now. Thank you for joining us.
Is that the weirdest thing you've ever heard? Radical jihadist terrorists, she had the nerve to say. Within 10 seconds, they dumped her. We're gonna have to leave you now. Now, why was that? Why was that? That was just it's strangest thing. That was on CBS Morning News here just a couple of days ago. Ponder that for a few seconds. Take a breath. We'll be right back on the Free for All Friday edition of the Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
All righty, it's Free for All Friday. Glad to have you on board with it. Free for All Friday. The phone number here is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. Your phone calls are welcome. Be like Kim, be like Jennifer, and make your voice heard. It's the way we roll around here on Fridays. We want you on board. All right, our next guest, good friend of mine, Megan Barth, the founder and proprietor of ReaganBaby.com. Megan, welcome back.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me back.
You've been up for what, like 5 minutes?
Pretty much.
All right, just checking. I mean, I know you live in Vegas. I get it, but I want to read you something here. I want to go a little trip down memory lane. You ready?
Yeah.
Let's be clear. Islam is not our adversary. Muslims are peaceful and tolerant people and have nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism. Tweeted Hillary Clinton. And I just thought you'd enjoy that. Savor that for a moment as we consider electing Hillary to Barack Obama's third term, because nothing says I am the leader of the free world quite like having blood run in the streets of Brussels, Belgium, while I'm having a hot dog and high-fiving with a dictator who's killed tens of thousands of people. I mean, that just says I am the leader of the free world.
Yeah, and then that followed up by a tango in Argentina. Did you pull that off my latest piece, Hillary Clinton, a champion for terrorists?
No, I did not, but I'm glad you wrote it.
Oh, well, yes. I pulled that tweet that she sent out. Yes, that's the leading tweet or quote that I have in my new article, Hillary Clinton, a champion for terrorists, on ReaganBaby.com. And to look at Hillary's past of cozying up with dictators, specifically anti-Semitic dictators, goes all the way back to Yasser Arafat, who was quoted as, "Peace for us means the destruction of Israel. We are preparing for an all-out war, a war which will last for generations." Now, that was back in 1980, and she and Chelsea are the main meme of, which is a real picture, by the way. She, Chelsea, and Arafat are standing in all smiles and hijabs. Or hijab,
no, your use of that tweet and then me referencing the same tweet just means, well, the great minds think alike, or sometimes accidents happen. One of the two. I have no idea.
Yeah, major simpatico going there. But then you look at Hillary. In February of 2015, after 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians were executed, beheaded by ISIS fighters, Marie Harf, she was infamous. She came out and said that, well, only if they had jobs.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, instead of running guns through Libya and giving the guys jobs that way, maybe they should have had like a jihadi job fair down in Libya. Yeah.
Yeah,
that would have been perfect.
Positions in high tech, in IT, in munitions and bomb making. You can have a job fair. And if everybody just had a job, and they had a nice job to go to and a chance to, fight for their family, none of this would happen. Of course, I would strongly recommend anybody who doesn't understand the nature of this war we're in to go back and read what Thomas Jefferson said about the Barbary states, Tunisia, Libya, and Tripoli and all these places along the northern African coast, because they were attacking and killing Americans and putting people into slavery and stealing our goods back in 1800, 1801, 1802, 1803. And Jefferson didn't even want a navy, but he put a navy together so he could go fight them, because they said, listen, this is why we have the right to do this, because of the Islamic Prophet, and we'll let you be if you give us $250,000 right now. Jefferson said, I don't think so. So he went and did what? He killed them.
Right, and what we have in our administration is we fund the Muslim Brotherhood when we overthrew our ally at Mubarak in Egypt. No one can tell me why we overthrew Libya. And, Muammar Gaddafi was basically just having some fun with drugs, prostitutes, etc., and was sleeping in tents. He had no weapons of mass destruction. He wasn't, he was quiet, especially after Reagan kicked his butt. And we went in there along with NATO and Valerie Jarrett and this administration. We overthrow Libya, and then we leave a vacuum in Libya, allowing for ISIS to take control in the northern African part and start
almost
globally
appears
recruiting.
Intentional, doesn't it?
Pardon?
It almost appears intentional, doesn't it?
Jeez, yeah. And then when you look at who's in NATO, and this is where Trump has it right, what the heck are we doing? And I don't know if you saw Pat Buchanan on Hannity last night, but he was brilliant, as usual, Uncle Pat. But we are at war, okay? And when Hillary Clinton comes out and says this radical jihadism, no, jihad is jihad. It's just inherently radical. It's inherently violent, and jihad means war. There is no radical jihadism. So they want to whitewash terror. They want to whitewash terror, and she will double down on that, just as Barack Obama has done. She will double down on that if she is commander-in-chief.
It's mainstream Islamic terrorism. That's what we need to call it. It's mainstream Islamic terrorism. That's what it is. Make no mistake. For the Sunnis anyhow. For the Shia, maybe something different in conversation I've had. But for Sunnis, that's what they read. That's what Thomas Jefferson discovered. In 1800, when he tried to deal with these folks and said, why are you attacking us? We're a young country. You're killing our people, stealing our stuff, putting our people into slavery. Why would you do that? And the response, basically, from the liaison to London was, "It's our right. It's what our prophet says. It's what we do. It's who we are." Nothing has changed.
No, nothing has changed. It's just gotten more violent, and now with the global network, they've gotten much stronger and more profitable. And when people look at Brussels, they're thinking, "Oh, that happened over in Belgium." They attacked an American interest, an American airline. Called American Airlines. They purposely sought that out. It is a very strategic location for them to attack. It is said that they were going to try to attack the nuclear facility. NATO is not far away. These terrorists are operating as experts. We're operating as the JV team. And we need to get our butts together and get a commander-in-chief who understands the enemy, who can call out the enemy for what it is. It is part of the Islamic doctrine, which is being run by a caliphate the size of Indiana, whose only goal is the destruction of Western civilization. A job fair is not going to save us, and certainly President Obama or Hillary won't.
You are such a xenophobe. That's all I get out of that, Megan. You're a bigot and a xenophobe. Because that's what they do. That's what happens when you present logical, clear, concise arguments. The left goes, you're a bigot. You're an Islamophobe. Well, what the hell does that even mean? Yes. Am I scared of Islamic terrorism coming to America? Yeah, I am. Am I afraid that that'll happen somewhere in the middle of, Texas or Georgia or Maryland? Yeah, that bothers me. Yeah, it bothers me a lot, and nobody would be surprised to turn on their TVs today and see what was happening in Brussels, Belgium, happening here? Nobody.
Well, no, because look at what happened in Garland, Texas, at a freedom of speech event that Pamela Geller had to draw Muhammad. You had two jihadists that drove from Phoenix, Arizona, in a radical mosque, already identified, and wanted to shoot up all the people there. Thank God for a cop with a gun. We already have radical mosques here. Look at what happened in San Bernardino. And when Donald Trump calls for the surveillance of mosques, New York City was doing that under Giuliani until the socialist, Bill de Blasio, came in and stopped that practice, establishing basically a no-go zone. In Slaves of Sharia, which I write on Reagan Baby, right after San Bernardino last year in November.
There you have it. Megan Barth, we got to leave it there. We got to leave it there. I'm sorry. ReaganBaby.com. ReaganBaby.com. You'll love it as much as I do.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
It is Free for All Friday. Phones are open for the balance of the time here. You know, Alex, go ahead. Ring Megan back up. I want to let her finish. I cut her off there. I want people to know they can use ReaganBaby.com as a resource. Just ring her back up, and if you can get her on the line. Meanwhile, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. You know, and Megan was saying something there before we went to break that kind of got my attention. And I guess what it is I'm sitting here thinking about Barack Obama's JV leadership. It's funny in a sick-to-my-stomach kind of way, but it's funny to think back now and remember how Barack Obama dismissed the Islamic State and its network of bloodthirsty jihadist killers as the junior varsity. He implied that those murderers who would cut off people's heads with a jackknife, that would murder anybody, were not to be taken seriously. They would soon be a thing of the past. Then, of course, the attacks on Paris, 500 maimed and murdered by the Islamic State, a city hammered by the Daesh, as our president, the leader of the free world, did not take seriously. So it's not the Islamic State that appears to be junior varsity, but Barack Obama's leadership appears to be junior varsity. And Megan, I brought you back because we ran into that hard break right there, and I want to make sure people know that they can find you as a resource. And you know, I got to thinking in the break there, it's the real JV here, if you believe that part of it, because there is the other darker possibility, which is this is all intentional by Barack Obama, Megan. So, what do you think of that?
Well, you have to look at his past and where his allegiances lie. You know, it's very well scripted out. He even told us that he was going to fundamentally transform this country. And it's not through Obamacare, which I had thought was the original intent and goal of taking over 1/6 of the economy through socialism and our health care. It's actually the fundamental transformation that occurs at our border and putting the United States, shrinking the United States from the world stage. And what happens then is you see the vacuum being filled by dictatorial and totalitarian regimes. What I was going to say before we had that hard break was in the Slaves of Sharia piece, which I wrote right after San Bernardino, there is a study that I cite within that was taken of 100 mosques throughout the U.S., and 51% of those mosques were found to have violent teachings. Now, which is called jihad. If the mosques were Sharia compliant, which is a political form of Islam, that is what Sharia is. It's political. 84% of those mosques were teaching jihad or violent literature. We have a problem in this country. We have terrorist attacks. We've got 19 Americans that have been killed by homegrown terror here in the United States in 2015. They are being radicalized either prior to coming to this country on a visa, like the fiancé visa, which the jihadi bride in San Bernardino had come through. Look at our visa system right now. She basically answered two questions in order to get allowed into this country. And I'm not kidding. Are you a terrorist, yes or no? She, of course, checks no. Do you have any terrorist group affiliations, yes or no? She checks no. Oh, welcome to America. We have an issue because we are denying that there is, number one, an ongoing jihad, which is war, which they have claimed on us, which we have not declared. They've declared on us, but we have not declared on them. Mm-hmm. And we're supposedly fighting a radical jihadism, which what Hillary Clinton calls it, with a 26, ally? No, we're not. No one can name them. We're not doing anything. We weren't even bombing their oil reserves for fear of environmental damage. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah, I got that. Some, but no, we didn't want to do too much because global warming, which is what leads to this, by the way. I am quite sure that these people that murdered and maimed 300 people in Brussels, Belgium this week were displaced because it was too hot and there was a bit of a drought. So then they decided, well, we'll travel halfway across the planet to Europe and murder people because of global warming. I mean, how do thinking people let that escape their lips?
Well, and that's what I write in my article. Any thinking person, when they would look at Hillary Clinton's past, specifically with Yasser Arafat and his wife, would know that she's on the wrong side of history, like Democrats usually are when it comes to foreign policy, undermining our freedoms and liberties by cozying up with dictators, communists, and totalitarians. They've always blamed America. When you look at it, they'll blame America first on the world's ills before they will protect America and get behind our American
And just in case
values.
you missed it, Barack Obama, after he was doing the dance in Buenos Aires yesterday, he also took time to apologize for America for being slow to the human rights bandwagon during the reign of a violent military dictatorship there, because clearly it's America's fault that the internal politics of Argentina weren't looked after properly. I mean, he'll apologize for anything when it comes to America, for God's sake. I'll give you 1 minute now, Megan, to get in all your appropriate plugs.
Well, that's what happens when you're raised in a madrasa and then raised by communists. He sees America as an imperialist nation, not as a liberator. So he will continue to apologize for us. And, oh, by the way, he might go to Hiroshima. Can't wait to see what he says there. My grandfather fought in World War II. I wish he was still alive.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, again, in that sick to my stomach kind of
But here's the good news, Steve. Here's the good news, Steve. When it comes to this election will be about terror, this election will be about our border and safety and security. When that is the case, a Pew poll taken in 2014, 58% of Americans will choose a Republican president, and that's what we need to make sure is in the White House. I don't care if it's Trump. I don't care if it's Cruz. We need to win because we need to fight these savages back to the 7th century.
Now stomp your foot and finish your coffee.
Thank you.
Megan Barth, you rock. You have a good weekend.
You too, thanks.
All right, it's the Steve Gruber Show, Free for All Friday. I just felt bad about her getting bumped off there at the end. She had bonus time, and why not? She's great. Back in a moment to wrap things up for this week on the Steve Gruber Show.